Hello my friends and welcome back. Thank you very much for being with me again today. With the new developments in Serbia, in Kosovo, with the deployment of the special police troops, units from Pristina, the Albanians in the north, where the Serbian population lives, mostly, and Serbs claiming that they will possibly deploy about 1,000 army personnel into the area, so to protect the Serbian population. I think it's a good time to revisit some information on the 1999 bombardment of Yugoslavia, of Serbia by NATO, illegal bombardment. It was never approved by United Nations Security Council, anything like that. And the NATO, the defensive alliance, bombarded Yugoslavia. And I'm going to read you about the casualties, the reasons. And I was surprised to find out something I didn't know before, and I was kind of informed about the whole incident, war, illegal bombardment. And I found certain things I was not aware of. But that's probably because I did not get a chance to hear the other side of the story told by the Serbians. And let's go over it. It's going to be a summary of the NATO illegal intervention. And it's a very interesting article. This comes from Sputnik, a Russian media, so obviously it's pro-Serbian, but they're going to cite Serbian intellectuals, Serbians, academics, academia. All right, so we have here from Sputnik, and this is the title: How U.S. NATO illegal bombing of Yugoslavia undermined global rule of law 23 years ago. Remember, we live under a rule of law and collective this and collective that. So on 24 March 1999, the US-led NATO bloc launched a bombing campaign, Operation Allied Force, against Yugoslavia, which lasted for 78 days. During the operation, NATO aircraft flew 38,400 sorties, including 10,484 strike sorties, and released 23,614 air munitions, killing at least 2,000 civilians and injuring 12,500 civilians. Is that war crime? Is that mass murder? Is it illegal war? What do you think? Now, I'm quoting, 20 years after the NATO aggression in Yugoslavia, the memories among the Serbian populations are very vivid, said Dr. Strijan Sljukic, a professor of sociology at the University of Novi Sad, Serbia. And I'm quoting again, the anti-NATO feeling dominate not only in Serbia, but also among the Serbs in Republika Srpska, Bosnia and Herzegovina, in Montenegro, etc. In spite of very strong NATO propaganda in the Serbian media that are controlled by the West and the activity of NGOs financed by the West, over 80% of the Serbian population are against the idea that our country should join NATO, end quote. The campaign was kicked off after the failure of the Rambouillet talks, and there's gonna come a lot of times Rambouillet. Remember that, on talks between members of the Federal Republic of Yugoslavia and the Kosovo Liberation Army, KLA, a Kosovo-Albania militia that was regarded as a terrorist organization by Belgrade. And I'm quoting, what people in the West have been indoctrinated, and I gotta tell you, that's what I thought as well, have been indoctrinated into believing that the bombing was the consequence of alleged crimes against Kosovo Albanians. So this is what the doctor says, Dr. Trifovic, Srđa Trifovic, a Serbian-American publicist and historian. He said that what people in the West have been indoctrinated into believe is that the bombing was the consequence of alleged crimes against Kosovo Albanians. That's what I thought, to a certain part, and I don't think they found there was a genocide. I think it was a United Nations. They investigated. Eventually, they said no, it was not a genocide. But anyway, so this is according to Dr. Srđa Trifović, a Serbian-American publicist, historian, and foreign affairs editor for Chronicles magazine. And I'm quoting, well, that is not true at all. The bombing, and pay attention to this, I didn't know this one, the bombing was a consequence of the Serbs refusing to sign the documents prepared at Rambouillet, near Paris, where the conference was held in February of 1999, which was in fact mostly US inspired. And it's going to tell you what that requirement with NATO troops on Serbian land, it was, I didn't even know that one. So, two conditions inserted into the agreement were unacceptable to the Serbian side. According to the publicist, first was a binding referendum on Kosovo independence 3 years after the signing of the agreement. Second, and this is the important, I didn't know, the free movement of NATO personnel under arms through the territory of Serbia itself to have access to Kosovo. So that means NATO troops could just come and go armed through the territory of sovereign Serbia. Yeah, okay, put this in the context of, let's say NATO is Russia, Serbia is Ukraine, and then you got the territories, the Donetsk, the Donbass being Kosovo. And you figure it out if you would agree with that. Put that in the context of the Americans and see if they're going to see the similarity. In fact, the US deliberately blocked any peaceful settlement to the conflict in former Yugoslavia to open the door to the military campaign, according to Daniel Kovalic, author and adjunct professor of law at the University of Pittsburgh in the US state of Pennsylvania. It was former US Secretary of State Henry Kissinger, a kosher guy, who admitted in an interview with UK Daily Telegraph on June 28, 1999. Remember this, what Kissinger is saying. And I'm quoting, the Rambouillet text, which called on Serbia to admit NATO troops throughout Yugoslavia, was a provocation, an excuse to start bombing. End quote. Did you hear that? I didn't know that. Now I do. So, according to RAND's 2001 study titled European Contribution to Operation Allied Force, NATO's military planners started preparing for a possible operation in Kosovo in May and June 1998. NATO was tasked to develop a wide range of alternative options, from preemptive deployments to a full ground invasion to stop the Yugoslavian government from preventing Kosovo's secession. The goal, I'm quoting, the goal of the NATO bombing campaign was first to destroy the last vestiges of socialism in Europe, and second to demonstrate to the world that the rest now ran the world and could go to war unilaterally without UN Security Council authorization, says Kovalic. The result was the fatal undermining of the rule of law in the world. Now, we have the then US Senator Joe Biden, yeah, this guy, the shuffling madness, the semi-conscious guy, was an ardent proponent of the NATO invasion of Yugoslavia. And this is what Biden said, and I'm quoting, "If I were president, I would just bomb Serbian President Slobodan Milosevic," end quote, Biden said in October 1998. Did you hear that? Is that a war criminal in the making? Now, we're going to find out, and I'm quoting, the bombing was intended to destroy Serbia as an independent country, to occupy 15% of its sovereign territory, and eventually recognize the secession of that territory as an independent country in its own right, said Srđa Trifković, and I'm quoting, so one could say with equal validity that if there was a headline in the Volkischer Beobacher in Berlin on 22 of June 1941 that the Wehrmacht was opening the door to peace in East, that's exactly the same validity. To cover the Time claimed that the cover of Time magazine, claimed that what NATO had done was opening the door to peace. And now we find out what the Clinton administration, which had this illegal war, bombardment of Yugoslavia, which, if that's illegal, that makes you a criminal of war. The Clinton administration's bombing campaign targeted not only the Yugoslavian armed forces. According to some estimates, NATO destroyed or damaged some 25,000 residential buildings, 470 kilometers of roads, 595 kilometers of railway infrastructure, 14 airports, 19 hospitals, 20 health centers, 69 schools, 18 kindergartens, 176 cultural monuments, and 38 bridges, causing up to $100 billion in economic losses. NATO aggression provoked a humanitarian disaster and an ethnic cleansing of the Serbs, according to Slujic. They were forced, I'm quoting, they were forced to leave their homes and became refugees in their own countries, end quote, he notes. NATO crimes against Serbs in Yugoslavia have never been thoroughly investigated, and those responsible had never been held accountable, according to some observers. Now, the International Court of Law, ICT, whatever, the International Court Tribunal for Yugoslavia, only persecuted people from Yugoslavia, says Professor Stevan Gajic, a research associate at the Institute of European Studies in Belgrade. But the conflict of Yugoslavia involves people from the West. It involved NATO countries, but nobody ever held Bill Clinton or Javier Solana or Madeleine Albright accountable. And I'm quoting, keep quoting, all of them were war criminals, or Tony Blair for the matter, Robin Cook, and many others, Wesley Clark, of course, the chief commander. Nobody held them accountable. End quote. Well. So, who's who, what's what? In 1999, and they talk about these guys here, when they did it, and they say that's kosher, that's A-OK. And the referendum or independence in 2008 voted in the Serbian province of Kosovo, legitimate, A-OK, perfect. No, not it was the most, I don't know, free and transparent referendum and so on. Really. So I didn't know a lot of things that these guys claim here. And I heard about the Americans blowing up bridges and kindergartens and buses with children and other stuff. When, you know, at that time when it happened, but it was information gotten from the West. There's not from the other side. I didn't have access to the other side much because it was controlled by these guys. So this is what those angels of good, I mean, if you're angel, you can be the angel of death if you know who that is. So angel of good here, they did to Yugoslavia, and now they try to continue with Kosovo and start over bullshit over there. Continue to take it away from Yugoslavia, from Serbia, I'm sorry. And they put that in the context with Crimea, or put in the context with Donbass, and you say, no, it's not the same. It's not the same thing. Of course, it's not the same thing, because Kosovo was never, if you want to take it like that, Albanian, and those territories that the Russians invaded were Russian at one point. So what are you talking about? Yeah, of course, it's not the same thing, but it works against those guys', not even arguments, I would say claims. Anyway. Now you maybe have more arguments regarding what happened in 1999 and how these guys that are screaming right now about the international community and the rule of law, rule of war, babi boo boo, whatever they claim, you know, the world is ruled by international law and all that. Just look through it and you know exactly they are hypocrites. Thank you very much. And some of them, as these guys say, maybe criminals of war. Being an illegal war, what do you want? Unauthorized by the UN, it qualifies. Thank you very much for being with me again today. Stay strong, stay smart, look for the truth, and be just.